1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Bloomberg Invest returns to London on March 22nd, gathering leading financial thinkers in investing to identify the biggest risks and greatest opportunities facing economists, money managers, and influential investors in the region. From traditional investment tools to crypto to alternative assets, how should we put our money to work? Join to hear from executives from Blackstone, Quantum Light, and Sotheby's. Learn more about Bloomberg Invest, strategies for wealth creation at BloombergLive.com/investradio.
Dear Calvary Hospital, my father, Curtis Moore, is my hero. Now 96 years old, he has led an exceptional life of self-sacrifice. A Montford Point Marine, a New York City detective, and a family man who cared for his children and grandchildren his entire life. So when other hospitals could no longer relieve his suffering or our family's emotional pain, we brought in Calvary's miraculous team of home hospice experts. Thanks to Calvary's doctors, nurses, and social workers, Dad was able to resume the quality of life he wanted and deserved, and I was able to become his daughter again, surrounded by the love of his entire family. Thank you, Calvary. Phyllis Robinson.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. With Calvary at Home, experience our unique Calvary care right in your own home. Call us today at 718-518-2465.
Credit card bills, large purchases, that home improvement project, it could all add up. Thankfully, Columbia Bank can help you consolidate and save with a home equity line of credit. Get the funds you need for anything you need. And the rate, often lower than a credit card. Great rate, something you can always count on. Just like Columbia Bank. Apply quickly and easily online or in a branch. Count on Columbia. Subject to credit approval. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
And catch us live. Your favorite Bloomberg 1130 shows, including Bloomberg Surveillance, Wall Street Week, and Bloomberg Sound On, are also available as podcasts. Listen today on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's now 6:22 on Wall Street. I'm Doug Krisner in New York. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia is brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Interactive Brokers charges margin loan rates from 5.08% to 6.08%. These rates are subject to change. You can learn more at ibkr.com/compare. We check markets throughout the day for you here on Bloomberg. Well, the story in markets today, I think, begins with what happened in the Treasury market, where yields were up across the curve, based on the view that we have to prepare for higher interest rates. Tomorrow in the U.S., it would be Tuesday, Fed Chair Jay Powell will kick off 2 days of testimony to Congress. He will likely remain hawkish and highlight the risk of rates being higher for longer. So if you look at the price action today in yield terms, we were up across the curve, the 2-year climbing right around 488. And interestingly, the 3-month LIBOR surpassed 5% for the first time in more than 15 years. You know LIBOR as the major global benchmark. Now, it will be phased out on June 30th. Nonetheless, it has surged recently to reflect expectations for much tighter Fed policy. 10-year Treasury today at 395. In spite of that move up in rates, not a lot of action in the currency market, and equities trade mixed. The Dow, the S&P, each up 0.1%. NASDAQ comp, though, down 0.1%. We'll take another look at markets in 15 minutes. Ed Baxter next with a look at global news headlines. Eddie.
All right. Thank you very much, Douglas. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has appointed a special investigator to study whether there's any truth to the allegations that China interfered with Canada's elections. 2 U.S. senators plan to introduce legislation this week aimed at regulation of technology products from China. A report that the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy will now meet Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen in the U.S. rather than Taiwan. Iran's supreme leader is now saying the reported poisoning of hundreds of Iranian girls in recent months is an unforgivable crime. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the state will stop doing business with Walgreens. This after the retailer said it will refrain from selling abortion pills in 20 Republican-led states. And a bipartisan bill is being fashioned in the U.S. Congress to place more regulations on the railroad safety operations. This is a follow-up to the horrendous toxic spill in East Palestine, Ohio. Global news, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter, and this is Bloomberg. Rashad.
All right, thanks, Ed. Let's have a look at J.P. Morgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon, as he said that the U.S. consumer is in, quote, great shape, and weighed in on the prospects of a so-called soft landing for the economy, speaking exclusively to Bloomberg's Ed Hammond on the sidelines of a J.P. Morgan event in Miami.
The consumer still has a lot more money in their checking accounts than before COVID. They're spending 10% more than last year, 40% more than pre-COVID, and it looks like they'll have excess money to spend roughly until the end of the year. And at that point, you can say there's a little bit of a cliff, there's a soft landing, and also QT has not started to bite. That also is going to happen at one point, probably later this year, and that's when you're going to know what these things do. But we can still have a soft landing. And the other thing about all this economic forecasting is Russia-Ukraine. I mean, that can change it dramatically and very, very quickly.
Do you think absent Russia-Ukraine, we will have a soft landing?
I think it's still possible, but I look at possibilities as still possible. Possible. I think a mild recession is possible, a harder recession is possible. I think there's a good chance that inflation will come down, but not enough by the fourth quarter. The Fed may actually have to do more. And I think a lot of things that have happened in the world, I think of the bigger trends are inflationary. Infrastructure spending, the IRA Act, lessening trade with certain parts of the world, bringing trade back into America. Those things are all, the greener transition is going to take a lot of capital. So all those things kind of have inflation attributes that are very different than we've been through the last 20 years.
I'm going to go back to the consumer point in a second, but last year you talked about in your letter this sort of confluence of three major factors: QT, America rebounding from a sort of post-COVID economy fairly strongly, and then obviously the war as well. You talked about them sort of leading us into an unprecedented period. How do we get out of that period?
It's diplomacy. I mean, that's why this is not, we always talk about uncertainty in the economy and the uncertainty, but I call it normal uncertainty. The weather is, we know what the weather's like. That's why these things are different. QT, coming out of COVID, the war in Ukraine. I think it's been pushed out a little bit further. I would have thought we'd be doing this a little bit sooner, but it does look like some of that stuff is coming to fruition at the end of this year. Russia-Ukraine, we just simply don't know. I think it's wrong to even predict, because if you look at the history of wars, they've been pretty much unpredictable in how they play out and which ones affect the global economy and how they do. There was a lot of wars. They didn't affect the global economy, but they were literally in very small parts of the economy. This is not in a small part of the economy. And this is a European nation. It's Russia and it's oil and, major oil and gas supply and food supply around the world. So this is a whole different attribute to it.
Why does the consumer, particularly here in the U.S., remain, as you say, fairly bullish?
Over a period of time, the home price has been going up. Jobs are plentiful. Wages are going up the lower end, which I think is a good thing. They've got a lot of money in the checking account. Stocks generally have gone up for 10 or 15 years. The consumer is, if you look at it today, in great shape. So I'm telling you, that's going to end at one point.
J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, and Rich, very interesting that for him the most important issues are U.S.-China relations and Ukraine, and not interest rates, not the Fed, and we spend so much time agonizing over what the Fed will do. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Approaching 7:30 in the morning right here in Hong Kong and in Singapore, 6:30 in the evening on the eastern seaboard of the United States. I'm Rashad Salam.
And I'm Brian Curtis here in Hong Kong alongside Rish. Trading is half an hour out in Tokyo and Seoul, and then 2 hours later we'll get the Hong Kong and China markets trading. A little bit of a mixed picture here for stocks today. It feels a little bit like a down day on Wall Street. It was actually more of a down day than an up day. The average stock was down about 0.5%, but the mega caps did well, and the S&P 500 finished up 0.1%. More on the markets with Doug Krisner coming up in a few moments. Let's get to the top stories.
We're having a look at Cheniere Energy. It says that China may not supply liquefied natural gas to Europe like it did during last year's energy crisis. Chief Commercial Officer Anatol Fagin telling us that Beijing may instead take flows away from Europe to serve its own growing economy.
China has started to take additional volume. It will, we don't see it as being that sort of relief valve in 23 that it was in 22 for obvious economic reasons. Europe, on the other hand, is much better positioned today than it was in early 22 in terms of inventories because of U.S. LNG coming to the rescue and because of the mild winter.
That's Cheniere Chief Commercial Officer Anatol Fagin. He did blame COVID and China's 5% GDP growth commitment as factors impacting gas flows to Europe.
China is said to be creating a central agency to manage the flow of data. We get more here from Bloomberg's Yvonne Mann.
The new bureau would become the top overseer of data-related issues within the country and abroad. It's a big change. The Wall Street Journal says the move centralizes power under one agency rather than the multiple bodies that now oversee information and removes some of the clout held by the Cyberspace Administration of China. The new agency would appear to be part of President Xi Jinping's move to consolidate the party's grip on the Chinese economy. In Hong Kong, I'm Yvonne Mann, Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
All right, well, let's have a look at what's going on with the Apple supplier. Foxconn Technologies confirmed its intention to set up a new plant in India's Karnataka. Young Liu, chairman of Foxconn's flagship unit Hon Hai, wrote a letter to the state's officials, Liu saying that his company would work towards successful grounding of the manufacturing site project, but he did stop shy of guaranteeing a plant will be constructed and didn't include investment amounts. We did report last week that Foxconn is planning to invest about $700 million on a new plant in India. The plant would be used to ramp up local production of iPhone parts. It could also be used to assemble handsets for Apple and make some parts for the company's electric vehicle business.
Interestingly, a day of gains really in the Taiwan market yesterday for Hon Hai, up about 1% for the day. Now it's time for global news. Canada is going to review allegations that China interfered in its national election. Ed Baxter has global news in the 960 newsroom in San Francisco. Ed.
Yeah, Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has yielded to pressure and has appointed a special investigator, telling reporters, quote, upholding confidence in our democratic process and in our elections, in our institutions, is of utmost importance. He says the investigator will have a wide mandate to make recommendations on combating interference and strengthening the democracy. Legislation due to be introduced this week in the U.S. regulating technology from China. Senator Mark Warner is one of the sponsors, and Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons says the concern is secrets.
And it gives the U.S. the authority on national security concern grounds to ban or prohibit certain Chinese technology here in the U.S.
And Kaylee says it would include TikTok, yes. A report today that U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he is going to change plans for meeting with Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen. The McCarthy plans to meet in his home state of California rather than traveling to Taiwan. Financial Times reports that he hopes to avoid an aggressive response from Beijing. The focus on the origins of the COVID pandemic are changing a bit to say that the globe needs to set up systems for monitoring global biolabs like the one in Wuhan, China. Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts, Bloomberg Sound On, says, yeah, it's time to move.
I want to know, too, about the origin of this pandemic that upended life for the last 3 years and cost millions of lives and trillions of dollars in economic damage. But that does not mean that we have to be at a standstill while we hear this information.
And Bloomberg's Rick Davis says it's definitely time to move.
How serious do we want to take this? Do we want to actually get investigators to go into these labs, create a global pressure campaign to do it? And I'm sure China's not the only one we should be looking into.
The U.S. official position at this point is that it's most likely that COVID began in a biolab in Wuhan. Again, that verbiage is likely, most likely. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the state will stop doing business with Walgreens. This after the retailer said it will refrain from selling abortion pills in 20 lead Republican states. His tweet says, quote, California won't be doing business with Walgreens or any company that cowers to the extremists and puts women's lives at risk. We are done. The governors had also directed the Department of Health and Human Services to review all relationships Walgreens has with the state, including Medi-Cal and Covered California. These are the state's two largest public insurance plans. Now, Walgreens and CVS face fines and lawsuits in those 20 states if they mail the pills. The fact that Medicare, Medi-Cal, Covered California may not have a relationship with Walgreens could affect millions of people statewide. Global news powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter, and this is Bloomberg. All right, Rich.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that, Ed. Just looking at prices here at the moment, we got the Australian benchmark off by 0.25% as we await that all-important decision on interest rates later.
Tomorrow at 3 p.m., a conversation with Ken Griffin.
I think we're at a very, very volatile inflection point.
Bloomberg Radio and Television sits down with the Citadel CEO to talk markets, investing, and a record year for his hedge fund.
My team for choice thinks 2023, we avoid a recession.
Citadel founder and CEO Ken Griffin.
We think we've seen peak inflation.
Tomorrow afternoon at 3. Only on Bloomberg 1130 and Bloomberg Television.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of the brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Let's let people pedal those bikes. Interval. Burn. Smoke. Burn. Woo!
Performance is more exhilarating on a real road. Introducing the Audi Q5. With a 261 horsepower engine that'll take you 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. Always obey local speed and traffic laws.
Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your tri-state area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today. Or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
The New Deal created American infrastructure that unleashed new opportunity. Today, we're doing it again with massive investment in modernizing our infrastructure to build for tomorrow. At Build America Mutual, we protect your municipal bond investments that help make it happen, building a vibrant future for our communities and your portfolio. Invest in the future of America with BAM insured bonds.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest Sound On podcast, we talked to former OMB director, former acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney for his take on Donald Trump's speech at CPAC.
Call it Trump PAC now. It's not really a conservative PAC. It's Trump PAC, which is reflective of the fact that nobody else besides, I think, Nikki Haley showed up, or at least none of the other leading likely candidates, DeSantis, Pence, Pompeo, etc. You've hearkened on that number about the 63%, and what I'm telling you is that 63% is too low. Everybody there should have been a Trump fan, and apparently they weren't. In that environment, Trump should be winning 85-90% of the vote. So I'm not sure where the 63 came from. I understood why the number was lower in Florida, because that's Ron DeSantis' home territory. But this was in Washington, D.C. DeSantis wasn't there. That number should be higher than 63%. On the Trump team, I'm claiming victory, and you should, because you won by 43 points.
Yeah.
But the number could have and probably should have been higher.
Much said about crowd size and